I think a new team has arrived in the AFC West, and their name is the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah.
Herbert stops, launches deep. Jalen Guyton, he's got it!
Herbert fires open, making the grab. Mike Williams down the sideline. 17-yard line, look out again. Carr, intercepted.
We are back with another episode of Shock Therapy Podcast. Been a little while since me and you have gotten together. You had an outstanding conversation last week with somebody that was pretty cool. I was laying out on the beach in Kauai, listening to the podcast. And dude, that was an awesome conversation with that guy. I really, really enjoyed what you did there.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah. Yeah, thanks again for Tony James for joining me last week. It was funny how we kind of ran into him. I reached out to one of our followers, Brian Rick, who is very active on social media, big follower of the show, big follower of, I think, everything Charger related. That guy loves and bleeds Charger football. So reached out to him, and then he kind of just introduced me to Tony. I looked on his social media, and it just self-proclaimed Charger fan since '64, but you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. You know, I think a lot of people say they're a fan of a team, but Tony knew what he was talking about. I kept joking with him. I think this guy has a photographic memory for Charger football. He made a joke on the podcast saying he doesn't remember his cousins' names. He doesn't remember his family members' names, but he'll remember everything that happens in a Charger football game. So loved talking with that guy. It was a really fun episode, and yeah, I was happy I was able to do it.
You know, it was actually perfect timing that you had that conversation with him, because I brought 2 books with me to Kauai, and one of them that I purchased is called Tales from the Chargers Sideline, a collection of the greatest Charger stories ever by Sid Brooks. Sid Brooks, also known as Doc, was the Chargers equipment manager from 1973 to 2000. So I got to read his book, and basically this book is a collection of like really, really short stories. And what I would like to kind of do on each episode is read one of these stories. They're super short. They're usually like 3 paragraphs long, but it's all insight from his days with Dan Fouts through the 90s. And it's a lot of fun. I actually thought that this was really awesome because I didn't know about the Chargers equipment manager, Sid Brooks, who had this close relationship with Dan Fouts and Charlie Joyner. He's a big Domino's guy, big locker room guy for them. And he did a lot to help the Chargers win. You'd be surprised some of the sneaky things he would do to the opposing team's locker room and all kinds of weird, crazy stories. So I'm going to go and start with reading one of these. This is probably going to be one of the longest ones that I'll ever read, but this is like, it's awesome. So this is him joining the Bolts. My secretary, Scotty Culleton, laid the sports section of the Colorado Spring Gazette across his desk at the Air Force Academy. He says, "Look inside this article, Sid. The San Diego Chargers are looking for an equipment manager. Why don't you apply?" I bent over the shoulder and read the article. "I'm not an equipment manager," he said. By January 1973, I was eligible to retire after serving 20 years in the Air Force. A career in civilian life was on my mind. My job title back then, he was a non-commissioned officer in charge of the Air Force Academy Cadet Athletic Supply Branch. So he handed out basketballs and things like that to the Air Force. So he backed away from Scotty, shaking my head. "I don't even know how to put on a face mask onto a helmet. I believed my chance of landing a job in the NFL was little to none, and I refused to dwell on it. If you could persuade an Air Force major not to argue with you until it becomes a bird colonel and get away with it, then you can handle a bunch of athletes and coaches. Scotty insisted, "You're right for the job." She sent me my resume to the Chargers in spite of my protests. 3 days later, I was aboard a plane on my way to San Diego for an interview after receiving a phone call from Bob Hood, then executive assistant with the Chargers. So I'm going to read a small excerpt of this book every single day because I really thought that his insights on this game were awesome, but he didn't even apply for the job. He had somebody else apply for the job for him, and then he ended up getting the job after they interviewed like 200 applicants. So I think it's just kind of an awesome historical Chargers thing that I think would be like a fun addition to our podcast. So that'll be like a fun thing that we do. Like I said, this is one of the coolest books I've ever read historically about this guy who passed away in 2007, kind of on a freak accident. But it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to bringing that in.
Cool. Anything Charger related, I'm for it. So, yeah, and the equipment manager is a thankless job. You don't think a whole lot about it, but it takes a lot to get these guys fitted and dressed and comfortable come game day, because you don't want them thinking about their equipment come game day, and equipment managers have to put a lot of work in leading up to that. So.
Well, like I said, he was more than just an equipment manager. He would do things like send he called them little spies, his ball boys, basically, into the opposing team's locker room. And he would like steal whatever was written on their whiteboard, and they'd take a photo and bring it into the other locker room and show them the plays that they're talking about and their game plans and all kinds of just crazy stories that this guy has for, 30 years working for the Chargers, basically 28 years, 27 years. And the guy just seemed like a really, really cool dude. His stories with Dan Fouts are awesome. Some of the hazing things that the Chargers old players used to do. Cool. Yeah, it is. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really looking forward to bringing this to everybody, because I had a blast. I read it in, I want to say, like 8 hours, like nonstop on the plane ride. Like I started on the plane ride to the Seattle, which was my connecting flight to Kauai. And then from Seattle to Kauai, I read the entire book nonstop, and I was just glued to it. So it'll be a fun addition. But as we kind of move past that, we got a game to talk about, right?
Yeah. Football things are happening. It's great.
Yeah, I almost forgot football occurred. So let's go ahead and talk about our preseason matchup with the Rams. Let's talk about some of our, some of the great things that we saw. Overall, I think that there was more good from the game than there was bad. Like, I actually really liked what I saw from most players who ended up playing that game. So kind of tell me a little bit about your thoughts. I think the first talk about Michael Bandy coming out of nowhere and just having a terrific game. Let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit and tell me what your thoughts were of that game.
Yeah, I think first, I was just so excited that football was back. So I tried my best watching other preseason games. Just can't really get into it. I had it on because it's football. Didn't really care too much, but I watched this game twice. And I thought it was a good test for the Chargers, even though it is preseason. I think you saw from how the Rams kind of operated why they won a Super Bowl. They are so disciplined. They do not beat themselves. They are a good organization from top to bottom, and none of their starters played, but that doesn't matter. It's a good organization. It's a good culture that Sean McVay has built over there. I thought it was a good test. I think we're not quite there, but we have shown some positive signs. I think that you nailed it on the head. The one of the biggest standouts in that game, and a surprising star. I don't think a lot of people were expecting for him to show out the way he did. Was Michael Bandy. The guy was just a target magnet. I don't know how many targets he got, but he did haul in 7 catches for 73 yards. He had, I think, one of the best offensive plays of the game with that little whip route. I love Dan Fouts on the call because he was like, I think that DB needs to go pick up his jock strap. And I'm just sitting there on my couch laughing to myself. I love Dan Fouts on the call. I also love that LT is getting involved as the sideline reporter with the NFL Network. Love to see those guys. I think they just, you have a charge of football, and the fact that Dan Fouts and LT are reporters, you gotta have to have them on that game. That was fun. And then I didn't realize that Bandy was a San Diego product. Played his college ball at University of San Diego for the Toreros, and he had an outstanding game. He was also the first guy to return a punt. I think that's huge because when we're talking about this wide receiver 6 battle, are they going to keep 6 wide receivers? If they do, they're going to have to contribute on special teams. Bandy showed that he at least has some. The coaches are at least thinking about him as a return man. I think on the other hand, the guy he's battling with for that 6th receiver spot, Joe Reed, also had himself a nice day. 4 receptions, 61 yards, that really long touchdown that broke that game open on that broken coverage. Just ran that little crosser or kind of post route, or what do you call that? Not really sure what route he ran, but it was a good route.
Touchdown. It was like a corner. It was like a post corner. Yeah. It was like a post corner, but it was because he ended up going over the top of the safety. He just needed to get open.
Yeah. Either way, good route. But he was the team's kick returner that game. Had 3 kick returns, I think, for about 60 yards, so like 20 yards average. And both of those guys, I was impressed with their run blocking ability. Both guys had outstanding games. They're gonna make it hard for that coaching staff to if they choose not to go 6 receivers. That's going to be really hard. And then if they even go 6 receivers, that's going to be a tough choice between Bandy and Joe Reed. Both guys really showed out.
Yeah, so Michael Bandy was a stud for San Diego. So he has a season with nearly 1,700 yards. And, Division III basically is San Diego, the Toreros. It's a small, tiny school, really, really expensive. My wife actually ended up going to that school. That's where she ended up getting her undergrad from. But
it's a great school. It's very expensive.
In 2018, he had 88 receptions for 1,698 yards and 14 touchdowns with a 99-yard long, like on the 1-yard line, catches the ball on like a slant and takes off for 99 yards. He was a stud. He was averaging 140 yards a game. And then in 2019, he added another 1,100 yards and another 12 touchdowns. I mean, this guy was really, really good coming out of college. The issue is he never played up to, the talent level of an SEC or any really Division I program, which is why he went undrafted and kind of overlooked. But he was very, very good coming out of college. And he had himself a terrific game. Probably helped that he was also the dump off man quite a bit, playing in the slot. He's small, but he's still like 5'10". But he's a small guy with little arms. He's kind of like our little Wes Welker, our own little version of Wes Welker. But I really like what I saw from him, even more so than Joe Reed, mostly because I think he had a lot more opportunities. He was a little overthrown a couple times. I had to adjust for some catches. If you look at the interception, the last play of the game, he had to kind of come back. That was a tough grab for him. It ended up going in as a drop, really technically for him, because he had to like double clutch it. Like he wasn't going to catch that ball if you go and you look at it. But if you look at his route running, I mean, that whip route was great because he really set the defender up well, sold it. The defender came down and then planted his foot and went back to the outside and then had the speed to finish that play. Michael Bandy, last season, I was actually really liking his training camp. I really like his routes. I wish I would have got to go to more training camps this year and watch him a little bit more because he was one of the players that last year at training camp, the 2 practices I went to, that stood out to me just for how smooth his route running was. I think it's going to be tough for him still to make the roster, though.
I think it's going to be tough. Yeah, it's definitely going to be tough. I was going to just say my favorite thing about that route, though, he ran the exact same route just 2 plays before that against the zone coverage, which was obviously not as much bite on the in route because they had help on the outside and the inside, but he had just ran that route 2 to a defender had just seen it. So I kind of like equate it to like fishing. Like he ran the same thing. The fish didn't bite. And then the second cast over, they went for it. It was the exact same thing. He just presented it a little better. And you saw the result. The DB was just left.
Yeah. I mean, he in against man, right? And the corner was playing off man. He was playing, 8 to 10 yards back. And he had to go chase the drag, and then he committed to that drag, and then Bandy plants his foot and is gone.
And it was so fast. It happened so fast, Doug. It was a fantastic route. And Bandy's been on the team for a while, so for those guys, Joe Reed too. Like, I'm just happy that they're finally taking steps. They are showing why these coaching staff has invested so much time in them, because there's some talent behind it. They're just young and developing. So it was a good sign from them. That's exactly what this preseason is for guys like that who don't have a spot to show out and show us and other teams what they can do in this league. I thought it was a good game for both guys.
I think the hard part for Bandy is his special teams value as kind of purely as a kick returner, punt returner. When that position, he's probably further down the depth chart. He's probably below Joe Reed on that, and he's probably definitely below DeAndre Carter. So him making the team and not playing any other special teams role is really going to hurt him. And I think Joe Reed has the ability to be a much more dynamic kick returner. Granted, Joe Reed's not returning punts. Still something I want to see him do. But it just leaves me with, like, where does Bandy fit in with his special teams value already taken? And so you're going to add him as a sixth wide receiver who's not going to be gunner. He's not going to be a personal protector. Probably not running down on kickoffs. Maybe somewhere on punt return, but he's a little guy to be out there trying to make tackles and stuff.
Yeah, I think that is huge. That is going to be a big factor. I think another negative for Bandy, at least, is that I just think he's, if you want to just look at him as an offensive player in that room, I think he's a little redundant because of where he plays. He's a little smaller guy. You're going to run him out of the slot where Keenan Allen, Palmer, DeAndre Carter are most likely going to operate. And so I think Joe Reed, with his size as an outside boundary receiver, just kind of gives you a little more versatility on top of the stuff that he can do in the special teams, which I think is really going to be the key factor.
He looks a lot stronger, a lot thicker. He looks like more of your prototypical special teams player, where Bandy is kind of a tiny, small. If he's not playing on offense, then I just don't see holding him on the roster. Where does that make sense? I'm not really too worried about him hitting waivers and anybody taking Bandy, because I think every other team has their own version of that practice squad fringe type of player. Where I don't know if Bandy had 11 targets. No, there's no render that he was able to produce. He had so many opportunities where Reed only had 6 and might have been more productive overall because he had that 41-yard touchdown, and on 6 targets, he caught 4 receptions. On 11 targets, Bandy had 7. So, Joe Reed, given the same opportunity, fall kind of inside of that. And then he's a taller receiver, 6 foot. He's a little more lanky. He's not a lanky player by any means, but more so than Michael Bandy. Joe Reed might have the edge there when you take away volume and compare the two players side by side. I think Joe Reed is still coming together as a route runner, but he's got strong hands, and I think he offers more to special teams room, not only as a kick returner, but as a thicker, stronger special teams player to go out there and maybe go and get a tackle on punt or kickoff. Yeah. So it's going to be really tough for Bandy to make the roster. He's going to have to show out these next 3 games to really do that. Mm-hmm. And if you take into the fact that Jason Moore is ahead of him on the depth chart.
Yeah, I didn't see much of Jason Moore.
He's injured right now, but Is it going to be an injury that lasts, or is it going to be something where he just missed this week? So Bandy and Reed might still be pretty far away from making the roster because I still think Jason Moore was ahead of them on the depth chart. And special team or preseason games are important, but they're not making decisions based off of preseason. They're making decisions based off of practice. More than likely, it's the film room, it's the mental side of the game, and then it's practice. And the preseason games are for ways for them to see tackling abilities, see a couple other things, but I feel like the decisions are really made in practice.
For me, the way I kind of always look at it, I look at preseason games as the confirmation of the coaching staff's beliefs because they've already developed what they think about these guys. Can he or can he not contribute for me come game day? And I think it's the eye test. Like, this is how I feel. Is it true? Show me. And I think that's what you want that on film to confirm your biases, good or bad.
Yeah. Moving on to running backs, Isaiah Spiller and Joshua Kelley got the bulk of the work. Larry Rountree only had 3 carries. Joshua Kelley had 3 for 16. Larry Rountree 3 for 8. Kelley looked a lot better overall, just more decisive, more acceleration, hit the hole, hit it quick, hit it hard. I think they both had catches. Kelley had 3 receptions for 28 yards, so showed his ability to be effective in the passing game. I also liked what I saw from him in pass protection. He's definitely improved quite a bit, but they were giving a lot of carries to Isaiah Spiller, 10 carries, 34 yards, playing with the 3rd and 4th string backups out on the offensive line and still being productive there. And he looks quick. He looks decisive. I'm wondering next week if Larry Rountree gets more opportunities. I feel like they kind of threw the rookie out there and let him go and make some plays, gain some confidence, things of that nature. But they didn't give Larry Rountree almost any opportunities to play at all. Even in the 4th quarter, they ended up going with Letty Brown, and I think Marks had one. Kevin Marks had 1 or 2 plays in, but I was expecting Larry Rountree as the 4th running back in that room as a 6th round draft pick last season to have gotten some opportunities to play, and he got very, very little.
Well, and so I thought the same thing too, looking at the box score. But looking at the opportunity compared to Joshua Kelley and Larry Rountree, the snaps were very similar. They just didn't call Larry's number for whatever reason. Josh played 13 snaps. Larry had 10 snaps. They both had 3 carries. Larry just didn't get involved in the passing game like the other guys did. And so I don't know. I
think nearly as impressive in the run game. Just
he was not
slow, sluggish.
He looked
where
like
Kelley looks transformed.
He does. Changed the number to 25, dropped the 7, and just showing a much better feel for the game. I think this is entering his 4th season. But he was anticipating running lanes, very instinctual in the passing game. When Daniel was getting, flushed out of the pocket, feeling that pressure, he was just know where to be and kind of got those dump offs were nice. I thought, that outlet, I think Larry Rountree could have given that to Daniel because I thought Daniel got pressured a lot that first half of football. But JK looks new and improved. I think all of this hype that we're hearing about him, that he's stronger, he's just as fast, that lived up to the billing. 7.3 yards per touch, just produced. Only 13 snaps, but very, very productive while he was in the game. And I'm really excited for the running back room in general because when Spiller was in there, he wasn't running behind big movers of men like Josh Kelley was, but still very explosive. He had the bulk of the snaps, 21 snaps in that game. But I think it was mostly he's a rookie. Let's give him some professional experience. And I think those 2 guys look really good. Larry Rountree just was underwhelming, I thought.
Yeah, again, didn't get very many opportunities, and I don't think he got the opportunity to run behind Zion Johnson, behind
one.
Trey Pipkins, who we'll talk about here in a bit. I just don't think that he had the offensive line in front of him to really be that successful. But when he was in, I feel like he lacks explosion. I feel like I don't know. There's one carry in particular that I saw from JK where he saw the hole and he accelerated so fast through it. And then even like his ability, like he's not trying to make defenders miss anymore. He's running through them. He's much more decisive. And even in his interview, he just seems much more mature.
Right. Well, that's a big year. It's a long year. And he has the 1 year on Larry Rountree. So, maybe Larry can put it together next year. But I think that is a big that was the biggest problem with Kelley coming in, right? He just danced, something you never saw in college. So I think you're seeing the confidence come back to him. And it's awesome to see. I've been rooting for the guy since we landed him. And it's fun to see that develop. And if that hype continues, one of my coworkers actually played football with Joshua Kelley at UC Davis before he went to UCLA. I think that might be a interesting insight because he's known him back then, and he's saying the transformation from then to now is just crazy. So it'd be interesting to get that kind of insight. So if the Josh Kelley hype continues the way it's building right now, I think that might be fun. So just a little, keep that on your guys' radar. That might be a fun.
I'll be interested to listen to that. Let's talk about the quarterbacks real quick. Easton Stick, Chase Daniel. Overall, Chase Daniel was 11 for 17, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers, 1 pretty big sack. Quarterback rating 123.9. I think those numbers a little bit overinflated. For one, I think Chase Daniel's timing was off on the out routes. Could have had multiple interceptions. One of his velocity on his out routes seems to have diminished quite a bit. I think that his processor there, I just think that he was a little bit late moving through, and I think he made good decisions overall. But I mean, I could think of 2 pick sixes that were like so close to just being just late on. And I think that he missed Josh Palmer a little too often, just couldn't get him the ball. And I think that he had really good protection in front of him. I still don't think there's any chance anyway Chase Daniel does not stay on this team next season, even if he's not QB2. I still see him coming back as QB3. Easton Stick, 16 of 23, 119 yards. His offensive line, not nearly as great as what Chase Daniel had in front of him starting off, but he got a lot more opportunities. I really like what I've seen out of Easton Stick, enough so where I could potentially see us giving him a 2 or 3 year deal next season to back up Justin Herbert more long term. Still looks extremely athletic, getting outside the pocket on these design rollouts. I know he had a couple design runs for him. I ended up scoring on one. But then there's also a couple 3 and outs where the offense stalled under his arm. Dealt with some drops, dealt with some protection issues up in front of him, and still handled it very, very well. I really like how he's matured. I really like how he's developed, and he looks like a backup to Herbert for the long run. Chase Daniel probably on his last year with the team, probably nearing that retirement age of his. I think this is going to be his last year, at least with the team. But I really still think that Chase Daniel offers enough in terms of the processor, in terms of the leadership capabilities, in terms of just having somebody to bounce ideas off of, and to help bring really a young, under the age of 25 quarterback room. And he's kind of the veteran presence to the offense overall. I still see enough there, but I think Easton Stick is his velocity and his arm just seems to be way ahead of Chase Daniel. And I feel like the development is occurring. It's happening in a positive fashion for the team.
Yeah. I don't think Daniel was a negative, but I did think, I don't know. I thought the operation for the most part was a little more efficient with Stick, even with those stalled out drives. I just thought he looked better. And you look at their stats, they're very, very similar. Stick just had a couple more completions, 2 more yards. He didn't have any passing touchdowns. Chase Daniel had 2, but he did have the 1 rushing touchdown. And then the interception, I think, is kind of fluky. I really felt like we were going to score on that final drive. It just had that momentum. It felt like we were going to get in the end zone to at least have an opportunity to tie it. And then the Rams just made a great defensive play. And that's what champions do. Like, going into that game, a big focus for Staley was to win games the way, any different type of way. And that's what the Rams have done for years, and what they did last year and what got them into a Super Bowl. So they're just a grinded out kind of team, and who won on a really, I'm not going to call it a freak play, but it was strange, right? It should have been a completion to us. It should have been a new set of downs. It should have been a 1st and goal set up for the game on the line. Didn't happen that way, but I liked what I saw from Stick. I thought it was his best preseason game, even though the stats don't really show. I thought that last drive, I want to say there was 3 drops, not including the Bandy throw. Like, there was 3 other should have been completions that weren't not, because his receivers were dropping balls. But I liked what I saw from Stick, and it's been a long time coming. I feel like I think
there's been positives every single year with him. I see the development.
Yeah.
I still think his ball placement is a little bit off.
Sure.
Both quarterbacks struggled with ball placement at times.
They did.
But overall, I feel like he carried like pressure in his face, getting outside the pocket, and even the processor, the all of those things where I was happy with, I was okay with. It was really mistake-free football from them. They weren't turning the ball over. I know Stick had the interception, not his fault by any means.
Right.
But I feel like, they're backups. The ball placement just wasn't always there. I can think of the Bandy missed throw right over his head, just seemed to just go right outside his grasp, just barely. Little things like that. But overall, I think that they were efficient with what they had available to them, playing with 3rd and 4th string guys on the offensive line, even the wide receiver room. And they still handled it very, very well. I was impressed for what you are looking for out of a backup quarterback. Moving on to the offensive line, I really, really like Jamari Sawyer. I really liked what I saw with Zion Johnson. Trey Pipkins had probably one play that I can think of that he kind of got drove back, almost ended in a sack, ended up anchoring down kind of late, though. Didn't lose the rep. Probably just, it wasn't a lost rep because it didn't lead to a sack. And I think he held enough, and I think some of it falls on the quarterback for not stepping a little bit out of the way. But I saw enough from Trey Pipkins where I was like, okay, wow, especially in the run game. I think he really excelled in the run game. Based off of what I saw from Storm Norton and Trey Pipkins, I don't think any player played badly. No player really stood out, except I think Trey Pipkins was a little bit better in the run game. And I think I've seen enough of the development in Trey Pipkins be like, much more comfortable. Now I need to see him play against some more top tier edge rushers, not, I feel like this game for the Rams, they didn't play almost any starters. Their only real loss, Bobby Brown, which I think could be significant. Looks like he hurt his ankle, but there wasn't an edge rusher who played that I saw a matchup that I wanted to key in on with this Trey Pipkins Storm Norton battle. And I haven't seen enough in training camp to see Trey Pipkins go against Bosa or Khalil Mack or even Chris Rumph and Kyle Van Noy. I just haven't seen enough. But I think I'm comfortable. Jamari Sawyer lost 1 rep. Zion Johnson lost 1 rep. But overall, I think those guys all played fine. Guys who struggled, I think Foster Sorrell was god awful. Like Trey Pipkins last year, awful. I think he's going to be a long shot to make the roster. Will Clapp, I don't think played all that well. Lost a couple there. Zach Bailey got in for some reps. Ryan Hunter got in for some reps. There was one player on here. Breidan Jaimes. I thought Breidan Jaimes played well enough. He's been a real quiet guy this camp. Somebody that you haven't really heard a whole lot. And I really liked what I saw out of him last year. I feel like our depth on the offensive line looks pretty strong, much better, especially from the interior. But I think we're going to have to see how that all plays out these next 2 games. Probably going to see a little bit less of the deep backups. I'd like to see Storm Norton and Trey Pipkins really battle it out. Like one gets one half or each series trading out and see how they do playing a full game.
Yeah, it's tough too to evaluate a position like O-line, which is built on consistency, where the starters are going to play 4 quarters, and if you let up a pressure, if you lose a rep in a 4-quarter game, that's a phenomenal game, right? And so when these guys are getting 10 to 15 reps, and we're saying, oh yeah, there was one mistake, it's hard, right? You don't know how does that kind of draw out over a course of a game. So that was tough. I didn't see anything that particularly worried me. I saw some bright things. I think between Norton and both Norton and what is his name? Trey Pipkins. I think they had a combined each. I think each had about 10 reps. I think they gave up 1 pressure total between the 2 of them. I forget which one it was. It might have been Pipkins when he got pushed back. But
Pipkins had the 1 pressure for sure.
It was the pressure. Either way, like you were saying, I thought he was a little more impressive in the run game, but still very early. It'll be nice to see those guys go up against, the Micah Parsons here with Dallas coming to town for these 2 joint practices leading up to the preseason game. They're going to get a lot of work trying to stop Micah Parsons and the rest of the pass rush over there in Dallas. They'll have some more guys than the 3rd string Rams talent that they were playing against this weekend.
Yeah, so I'm actually really interested to see how that game goes in particular. Dante Fowler should be playing a little bit in the preseason. Terrell Basham might play a little bit in the preseason. I don't think DeMarcus Lawrence or Micah Parsons are going to play that game. And I don't know if Micah Parsons is going to play as a pass rusher as much this
in the
season.
game. In the game, no, I'm not. We're probably not going to see them in the game, but we're going to get those reps. We're going to get Pipkins and Norton against those guys in practice, which is what I'm excited about.
Yeah, and that'll be fun to watch. I just haven't. I mean, I've been so disconnected from football the last few weeks that I haven't really been able. I got to go onto The Athletic and read all of Daniel Popper's articles from 1 to 13 and see how that has panned out. Like I said, I really like Zion Johnson. Anything else you want to touch on the offensive line?
No, not sure if you were going to get into fullbacks, but I did want to talk about the 2 fullbacks that played a little bit. Just for Zander Horvath for not playing fullback in college, I thought looked phenomenal as a lead blocker. And then on top of it, showed some nice hands out of the backfield. He only had the 1 catch for 1 yard, but I thought it was a tough catch. It was high. He had to go up and get it. Showed good body control to extend and go pluck that out of the air with the defender breathing down his neck. So I thought that was a tough catch. It was a completion. It's not going to wow you in the box score, but I thought it was efficient. And then he picked up the 4th down conversion the next play. But I thought as a blocker, he looked really well. He looked really good. And then Naber's only got 2 snaps, I'm pretty sure.
And one of those was a lead block for a touchdown where it was the read option by Easton Stick, and he put the dude on his ass.
It was a great block.
He was
blocking in the other snap too. It wasn't as impressive, but it was like a 2-yard run from, I want to say, Rountree, or maybe I think it was Spiller at that point in the game.
That's still going to be a really good matchup to follow this season, is watching those two and see how that ends up panning out.
That's going to be fun. But I was just curious, do you think the more play from Zander compared to Nabers is because they just haven't seen as much from Zander? They know what they have in Gabe, or what? Or do you think that is kind of telling to where the depth chart is, that Zander got that much playing time?
I don't think it's neither. I think it was kind of luck of the draw. I think both players only played like a total of like 6 or
Neither
8
played
snaps.
much.
So that's going to be a battle decided purely in training camp. And I think it's 50-50 right now. It's just as similar as it is to Storm Norton, Trey, Pipkins. In the grand scheme of things, I think that they have Zander Horvath for the next 4 years as a drafted player. Gabe Nabers is a free agent come next season. I think Gabe Nabers is on his way out. Even if he outshines Zander Horvath, I think you drafted him. I think he's athletic, he's developmental, and I think he's just going to be a much more fun, dynamic player and somebody that you can mold into who you want him to be for this club. Right now, Gabe Nabers is probably a little bit better just in terms of him being in the league a little bit longer, being in the system a year longer. But you fully control Zander Horvath. You do not control Gabe Nabers. So right. Gabe Nabers next season, even if he is friendly with our quarterback, I just don't see him being around at the end of the season. It's just not in the cards. If you kind of look at the weather forecast, looks like rain for Gabe Nabers. Yeah.
Well, and it was a good run.
Yeah,
you can continue that friendship on another roster.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad if he stayed and we put Zander Horvath on the practice squad. I just don't see it happening. It just doesn't make sense to me. The two players are still so similar, just in talent level. I just don't see it when you control Zander Horvath and you can mold him into the player you want him to be, and then you can put, even if he's not ready, you can put Trey McKitty at fullback. You can use some of these dynamic tight ends to go and play different roles if you want that to occur. Let's talk about Jerry Tillery.
All right, sure. Okay.
Jerry Tillery still looks terrible in run defense. I know that he had a couple pressures. He was able to get to the quarterback. They used him as in the A gap right alongside, what was that, Christian Covington? Or no, Morgan Fox. They used Morgan Fox and Jerry Tillery side by side in the A gaps to start the game. And Jerry Tillery, I think one of the things that makes Jerry Tillery so bad, when he's taking on double teams, he has a tendency to turn his shoulder, and instead of staying parallel and like anchoring down, like he likes to get this huge, weird lean because he's so tall and
he is big.
But like he is getting dug out like he is so bad at playing the run, and it's making me mad because he didn't even play with the first team, anything in front of him.
No.
You looked at the Rams offensive line and they were all backups, and Jerry Tillery is still getting driven off the ball. Now, granted, Jerry Tillery offers something as a pass rusher, but somebody that was extremely impressive was Morgan Fox. I mean, Morgan Fox was putting people on their ass. There's one play in particular I'm thinking of where he just put the guard, ran through him, didn't get credited with the sack because it went to Chris Rumph.
Right.
He was right there, and it was kind of embarrassing to that guard. Morgan Fox played out, even against backups. Jerry Tillery looks like he isn't even at the backup offensive line level of talent. So Jerry Tillery was terrible.
Yeah, to me, I'm just like, where's the competition? Like, well, I don't know. I just feel like the fire is lost. Like, he seems like one of those football players who just played his whole life and is just kind of checked out, and it happens. And a lot of guys can't get it back, so they'll retire. But I think he is salvageable. I just think he needs that
I don't think he's salvageable.
find the love of the game. Well, I just think he's playing uninspired football, and that's what we're
I just
seeing.
don't think he's very good.
I agree with you there. But I think we're seeing. I think there's more than just that. Like it's beyond just the lack of talent. I just see no effort from the guy, and it's just consistency things. Like if you're gonna, it's just consistency. We've seen you do this, Jerry, and there's no way